Imagine a highly educated Stanford engineer,
Right.
like a guy who designs complex systems for a living.
Sure, top of the food chain intellectually.
Exactly. But he finds himself so completely addicted to his phone, so paralyzed by the endless scroll of social media, that he takes extreme measures.
And by extreme, you mean genuinely absurd.
I mean, he takes a roll of industrial duct tape, wraps it around his iPhone, and literally secures it to the end of a wooden broomstick.
It is such a striking visual.
It is. And then every single time he feels the urge to check his notifications, he forces himself to take that broomstick, walk into his garage, and physically hurl it across the room. Like he throws it like an ancient Spartan skirmisher throwing a javelin.
A highly advanced modern man reverting to absolute primal mechanics just to cure himself of a digital addiction.
And the crazy thing is, it worked. Like within 3 months, he didn't just cure his scrolling habit, he rebuilt his torn rotator cuff, entirely rewired his brain's reward system, and he actually accidentally invented a $200 a month executive coaching side hustle.
Right, he called it Spearlock.
Yeah, Spearlock. Today, we are diving into a worldview that believes this isn't just some quirky anecdote. This is a survival strategy.
It really is. It is an absolute rejection of everything the modern wellness industry sells us.
Exactly. Welcome to the deep dive. Now, before we get into the trenches today, I have a quick favor to ask you. Please hit that like button and subscribe to the show.
Yeah, it is the single best way to help us keep bringing you these incredibly detailed, uncompromising explorations of the ideas shaping our world.
It really helps, and the ideas we are exploring today are reshaping a massive demographic.
A huge demographic.
Today, we are reviewing a highly provocative, polarizing, and ultra-long new ebook. It's titled Mastering Self-Control, Revolutionize Your Life by Conrad Reicher.
Now, if you are listening to this, you might be part of an audience that is deeply interested in the history of our institutions.
Right, specifically how those institutions operated before they were captured by what the author describes as feminists and Marxists.
And you're probably interested in reclaiming what Reicher called your biological sovereignty.
Yes, biological sovereignty. This book is a raw, uncompromising war manual designed to help men understand exactly that.
And we should explicitly tell you right now, you need to check Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books to buy this fascinating book.
You really do. Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books and grab it. It is a dense, intricate piece of work, and reading it firsthand is really the only way to fully absorb the sheer volume of data he presents.
Right, the historical parallels, the relentless arguments. You need the original source.
Definitely. Now, before we unpack a single page of this war manual, we need to issue a mandatory neutrality disclaimer. This is important.
Very important.
The sources we are diving into today contain highly politically charged content. I want to make it explicitly and clearly stated that we, as your hosts, are strictly neutral.
Precisely. We are not taking sides here. Not left-wing, not right-wing.
Not at all.
We are not endorsing the viewpoints of the author, nor are we condemning them.
Our mission today is simply to impartially report on the contents, unpack these incredibly dense ideas, and convey the original source material so that you can understand this major cultural perspective.
This is about giving you the shortcut to being well-informed on a philosophy that is deeply impacting the modern manosphere and men's rights activists globally.
Yeah, we are just the messengers, and the message is massive.
It really is a massive intellectual and physical journey.
So here is the roadmap for how we are going to navigate Reicher's worldview today. First, we're going to break down his concept of the Spartan Code and his absolute annihilation of modern comfort.
Right. Comfort is the enemy.
Then, second, we will examine what he calls the biological siege. So that's the hidden threats to male physiology like microplastics and soy, and his brutal physical remedy for it.
Which is intense.
Very. Third, we will look at his analysis of corporate America and the collapse of institutional meritocracy. Fourth, we'll explore why he views the university system as a debt trap and why he champions the trades.
The whole rogue economy aspect.
Yes. Fifth, we dive into the frame war, which is his strategy for dominating interpersonal interactions and reclaiming your attention span.
And finally, we will outline his blueprint for building a divorce-proof legacy and an untouchable brotherhood.
So let's start at the very foundation in Chapter 1. The central theme here is that modern comfort isn't a luxury. Reicher argues that it is a deliberate chemical and cultural trap.
Yeah, if you are sitting in a 72-degree climate-controlled room right now, maybe leaning back in an ergonomic chair, Reicher is arguing that you are essentially being treated like a domesticated pet.
Like a literal pet.
He actually uses the word hijacked. He claims that modern men are hijacked by these controlled environments and by TikTok dopamine microhits.
Right.
What is so interesting about his approach is how he bridges history and neurology here. He compares the modern man sitting in his air conditioning, popping melatonin gummies to fall asleep, to a medieval peasant.
And his conclusion is wild.
Wait.
He says the medieval peasant was biologically superior.
Exactly. The peasant had better posture, better bone density, and a more regulated nervous system.
Riker frames our modern comfort not as the pinnacle of human achievement, but as a neurological lobotomy.
A neurological lobotomy. I mean, that phrasing is so deliberate.
I want to pause on that phrase. He treats comfort like a literal software glitch in the human machine. It's like he views your air conditioning unit or your food delivery app as an active enemy combatant.
He really does.
If you look at how an animal is domesticated, you remove the environmental stress.
Right.
You give the wolf a warm bed and guaranteed kibble, and over a few generations, you get a pug that can't breathe properly.
Right. The wolf becomes the pug.
And Riker's basically saying, you are the pug.
That is exactly his premise, and he grounds it in evolutionary biology. Let's look at cortisol, for example.
Okay, let's look at it.
In modern culture, cortisol is the ultimate enemy. Every wellness app, every yoga instructor, every self-help guru tells you to lower your cortisol.
Oh, totally. They tell you to meditate, to breathe deeply, drink chamomile tea.
Right. But Riker flips this entirely. He points out that evolutionary biology doesn't care about your feelings of zen. Cortisol naturally peaks in the human body at dawn.
And this is an actual documented thing, right?
It is. It's a well-documented biological phenomenon called the cortisol awakening response, or CRR.
And he asks, why do we have this massive spike of a stress hormone the exact minute we wake up?
Because ancient hunters needed that hormonal surge. They needed that biological anxiety to get out of the cave and track prey.
It's an alarm system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is the body's natural alarm system saying, you are hungry, the tribe is hungry, go do something difficult.
But Riker says that today, men use that exact same ancient primal cortisol surge to wake up, roll over in bed, and track memes on their phones.
We take this biological fuel meant for hunting a mammoth and we just burn it on a glowing rectangle.
Which brings us to his critique of the dopamine microhit. This part is fascinating. Riker points out that the modern man spends an average of 72 minutes every single day scrolling on platforms like TikTok.
And he dug into the specific timing of these short-form videos. The algorithm is basically designed to deliver a payoff, like a laugh or a shock, roughly every 2.5 seconds.
No, wait. This is the part that blew my mind. He claims that 2.5 seconds isn't just a random number optimized by Silicon Valley tech bros.
Right, it's deeply primal.
What is the evolutionary significance of that specific interval?
Well, according to the anthropological data Riker cites, 2.5 seconds is the exact evolutionary interval our hunter-gatherer forebears needed to adjust the trajectory of a spear mid-throw.
Are you kidding me?
I am not.
So the brain's circuitry for tracking a moving target and executing a lethal strike operates on a 2.5 second feedback loop.
Precisely. The brain anticipates the target's movement, it executes the physical command, and it registers the hit or miss in that precise time frame.
Wow.
And it triggers a highly specific, survival-based dopamine release. So every time you swipe up on a screen, you are hijacking this primal circuitry.
You are taking a neurological pathway meant for hunting and survival and redirecting it into a digital void.
Yeah, and Riker argues that this turns men into twitchy, distractible, hyper-stimulated shadows of a predator. You get all the dopamine of the hunt without any of the physical risk or the nutritional reward.
That perfectly explains the Stanford engineer throwing the broomstick.
Exactly. It satisfies that exact loop.
So, what does Riker propose as the daily application to fix this? Because he doesn't just diagnose the problem, he has a very specific, tangible remedy for it. The javelin remedy.
Right, the javelin remedy. He advises men to throw 50 PVC spears at a tire every single day.
50 of them.
50.
Yeah.
He is completely serious about this. He even mentions that you can buy collapsible polycarbonate models on Amazon if you live in a cramped urban environment.
Just picture that for a second.
Yeah.
You live in a high-rise in Chicago, you take the elevator down to the alleyway, and you just start hurling a collapsible spear into an old Michelin tire next to the dumpsters.
It sounds unhinged.
It really sounds unhinged, but he actually backs it up with data. He cites a 2023 NIH study. Break that down for us.
Sure. The study tracked 1,200 men in corporate environments. They separated them into control groups.
Okay.
One group practiced standard corporate mindfulness, so deep breathing, gratitude, journaling. yoga.
Usual HR stuff.
Right. But the other group was tasked with actively training their hand-eye coordination through primal ballistic movements. Throws, catches, strikes.
Ballistic movements, meaning explosive, targeted physical actions.
Correct. And the results were staggering. The men who engaged in the ballistic throwing exercises actually solved complex workplace problems 19% faster than the men who were practicing mindfulness.
Okay, I have to push back here, or at least ask for the mechanism.
Sure.
How does throwing a piece of plastic at a tire make you 19% faster at solving an Excel spreadsheet problem? Or like navigating a supply chain crisis?
It seems disconnected.
Yeah, is he conflating just getting your heart rate up with cognitive problem solving, or is there a direct neurological link there?
Riker argues it is a direct neurological link, and neuroscientists would actually point to the cerebellum and the motor cortex.
Okay.
When you perform a ballistic movement like throwing a spear, you are forcing the brain into a state of predictive timing and spatial awareness.
Right, you have to focus.
Exactly. You cannot throw a spear accurately while ruminating on an email from your boss. It forces a highly concentrated flow state.
And mindfulness doesn't do that.
Well, mindfulness often leaves the brain idle enough that people just sit there quietly ruminating on their anxieties anyway. Throwing engages the central nervous system in a way that clears the cognitive cache, so to speak.
Wow.
So it allows for faster processing speeds when you return to the desk.
That makes total sense. You are rebooting the computer through physical action rather than just sitting there hoping the software fixes itself.
Exactly.
And this ties into his broader system for the morning, which he calls the Agoj hour.
Right, the Agoj. For context, the Agoj was the rigorous, brutal education and training program mandated for all male Spartan citizens in ancient Greece.
Right, designed to produce warriors who were completely indifferent to pain.
And Riker's modern version of this is the 5 a.m. pyramid.
Break down the pyramid.
He mandates that you wake at 5 a.m. sharp, you take a cold shower, you lift heavy objects, and then, as he puts it, you sit down and plan domination.
Plan domination. I love how intense the phrasing is.
Oh, the phrasing is extremely deliberate, and the stakes he attaches to this are hilarious.
Yes, the 30-day challenge. He forces his readers into this challenge. If you fail to wake up at 5 a.m. and post video proof to your accountability group, the penalty isn't just that you feel bad about yourself.
Right, it's financial and ideological.
You have to donate $100 to a feminist organization.
He specifically names the National Organization for Women.
It is a brilliant psychological trick for his target demographic.
It really is. He notes that nothing motivates a specific subset of red-pilled men quite like the visceral threat of financially funding their ideological enemies.
That will get them out of bed.
Oh, absolutely. But beyond the clever motivation tactic, there is a strict biological argument he is making with the cold shower part of the pyramid.
Yeah, he has this scoring system, the Agoj Index. It's a 300-point system. You get plus 10 points for a cold shower before dawn.
But you lose 50 points if you hit the snooze button.
And if you fail to deadlift your body weight, he just gives you a 0 for the day.
Mm-hmm.
But let's dig into the cold shower part.
Yeah.
Why is he so obsessed with freezing water?
He is talking about building anti-fragility. This is a concept popularized by Nassim Taleb. It's the idea that some systems actually get stronger when subjected to stress, shocks, or volatility.
Okay, so stress makes it better.
Right. And the human nervous system is one of those systems. Riker connects this to David Goggins' famous 40% rule.
Which is the idea that when your brain tells you you're completely exhausted and done, you've only actually tapped into 40% of your physical capacity.
Yes. The rest is just a mental governor trying to keep you comfortable.
So the cold water is a way to basically hack that governor.
Exactly. Riker mentions a cellular metabolism study from 2022 showing that deliberate cold exposure spikes dopamine 250% higher than baseline.
Wait, 250%? That is a massive chemical shift.
It's enormous. He says it spikes it higher than taking Adderall.
How does sitting in freezing water produce a pleasure chemical?
Well, it's not a pleasure response, it's a survival response.
Oh.
When the cold water hits your skin, your body goes into acute thermal shock. The brain literally panics. It thinks you are dying of hypothermia.
Makes sense.
So it triggers a massive release of norepinephrine, which narrows the blood vessels to keep your core warm. And it simultaneously floods the brain with dopamine to keep you alert, focused, and motivated to get out of the water and go find a fire.
During your bathroom.
Right. But when you step out of the shower, that dopamine doesn't just vanish. It stays elevated in your system for hours.
Wow.
Riker views this voluntary suffering as a cheaper, cleaner, and far more effective treatment for modern lethargy than anything Big Pharma is selling.
He actually writes that your shower knob isn't a dial, it's a moral choice between beta and Sparta.
And you have to rotate it left.
It's such a visceral, aggressive way to frame a morning routine. It's not about feeling refreshed. It's about conquering your own weakness before the sun even comes up.
And that conquering of weakness sets the stage perfectly for his next major argument. Because if you accept that comfort is softening your mind, you must also recognize what Riker believes is an active biological siege against the male body itself.
Let's transition into that, because we are moving from the enemy of the air conditioner to the hidden, microscopic enemies Riker claims are actively destroying male biology.
Yes, he calls this the castration economy.
The castration economy. And the data he brings up here is, frankly, terrifying.
He pulls absolutely no punches on this topic. He points to a massive systemic drop in testosterone levels across the Western world.
Give us the numbers on that.
He cites a highly publicized 2022 meta-analysis. This was published in the journal Human Reproduction Update, and it confirmed that global sperm counts have nosedived by 59% since the 1970s.
59%.
Yes.
That is more than half of male fertility wiped out in a single generation.
In just one generation. And Riker doesn't think this is an accident or just a sad coincidence.
No, he blames microplastics in our tap water and the prevalence of soy in our diets.
The microplastics argument is really central to his thesis. He cites a 2021 environmental science and technology study. It found that the average man ingests roughly 52,000 plastic particles annually.
52,000. He literally calls it enough plastic to 3D print a Lego castration device inside your own body.
It's a graphic image.
Very. But I need you to explain the mechanism here. How does swallowing microscopic bits of, like a Dasani water bottle, actually lower a man's testosterone?
It comes down to endocrine disruptors. Specifically, a class of chemicals called phthalates, which are used to make plastics flexible.
Okay, daylight.
When these microplastics enter the human bloodstream, the body's endocrine system, which regulates all your hormones, gets very confused. Phthalates have a molecular structure that is eerily similar to estrogen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the male body mistakes these plastic particles for estrogen and actually allows them to bind to hormone receptors.
So the body thinks it's swimming in estrogen.
Exactly. And the pituitary gland in the brain detects this massive spike in what it thinks is estrogen, and it reacts by sending a signal to the testes to shut down natural testosterone production.
Because it's trying to balance the system out.
Right. It is a chemical feedback loop that is essentially chemically castrating men without them even realizing it.
That is horrifying. And Riker draws a massive historical parallel here that is vital for understanding his worldview, right? Because he doesn't just view this as a health crisis. He views it as the fall of an empire.
He compares modern microplastics to the fall of the Roman Empire. The Roman aristocrats famously sipped wine from pewter cups.
Which contained lead.
Yes. And they would even sweeten their wine with a substance called sapa, which was essentially a lead acetate syrup boiled in lead pots.
Insane.
They drank this for generations until the ruling class's fertility and sperm counts cratered. Riker is arguing that history is rhyming.
We are poisoning our own empire, not with lead, but with the convenience of Tupperware and synthetic clothing.
Exactly. And he attacks soy with the exact same ferocity. He points out that soy contains phytoestrogens.
Plant-based compounds that mimic estrogen.
Yes. Now, I know nutritionists debate the actual impact of dietary soy on human testosterone, but Riker's stance is absolute zero tolerance.
Zero tolerance. He tells men to boycott any food that is soy-shaped. He has a rule, right? If it's beige and squishy, it's poison.
Beige and squishy is poison. He even demands that his followers lobby Congress to aggressively tax fake meat subsidies.
Because he thinks pushing plant-based synthetic meats on the male population is a form of biological warfare designed to make men docile.
Yes. So his actionable steps are characteristically very intense. Because the environment is so toxic, he advises men to go to a clinic and freeze their sperm today.
Today, like
Yeah.
drop the book and go.
Exactly. He says you need to put the vials in cryogenic storage right next to your gold and your ammo. Protect your genetic legacy before the water supply ruins it entirely.
Wow. And once you've protected your genetics, you have to build the armor to protect your body. This brings us to his concept of the Iron Temple.
Which is his quasi-religious framework for the absolute necessity of lifting heavy weights.
For Riker, the gym is not about aesthetics, right? It's
No.
not about looking good at the beach.
Not at all. It is about survival, authority, and signaling dominance to the tribe.
He points to a study in the Journal of Gerontology. This study states that a man's grip strength at age 65 is a better predictor of his lifespan than his blood pressure or his BMI.
It's a fascinating metric.
I really need to understand this. Why is how hard you can squeeze a dynamometer more important than your blood pressure?
Because grip strength is a direct proxy for the overall vitality of your central nervous system and your total muscle mass.
Okay, muscle mass.
Muscle is metabolically active tissue. It acts as a sink for glucose, which protects you from diabetes. It protects your bones from osteoporosis.
So if an older man has a weak grip,
It means his central nervous system is degrading. His muscle mass is wasting away, and he is highly susceptible to frailty and falls.
as Riker puts in the book, weak hands die early.
Exactly. And he uses historical figures to contrast with modern leaders to prove his point about the necessity of physical strength and leadership. He talks a lot about Theodore Roosevelt.
Oh, Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, Teddy Roosevelt didn't outsource his fitness to a personal trainer doing light Pilates. He lifted heavy barbells inside the White House. He boxed.
Didn't he get shot once?
Yes. He famously got shot in the chest by a would-be assassin. He casually noted that he wasn't coughing up blood, and then proceeded to deliver an 84-minute speech with the bullet still lodged inside his ribcage.
That is unbelievable. And contrast that with who Riker calls out today.
Right. He specifically singles out the former CEO of Peloton.
Yes. He points out that when the Peloton stock price crashed 98%, the CEO was practically whining to the press.
Riker suggests that shareholders treat modern CEOs like memes because they pedal on stationary bikes that go nowhere instead of building real functional strength.
He argues you can't command respect in a boardroom if you look like you'd lose a fight to a stiff breeze.
Which raises a fascinating sociological question about how modern society views male physicality. Riker vehemently rejects the normalization of the dad bod.
Oh, the dad bod. The cultural narrative over the last decade has been to embrace the dad bod, right? To say it's relatable, it's cuddly, it's totally fine.
Right. But Riker calls the dad bod a literal surrender flag in the sexual marketplace.
And he gets deeply Darwinian with it. He points to the Venus of Willendorf.
Explain that for the listeners.
For those listening who don't know, this is a 25,000-year-old fertility figurine carved out of limestone. It features a woman with massive hips and a very large chest.
And Riker uses this to prove that evolutionary markers of fertility haven't changed in millennia for women.
Right. A wide pelvis, a specific waist-to-hip ratio. These are biological hardwirings that signal reproductive health.
But for men, he argues, the evolutionary markers of the Adonis index, broad shoulders, a narrow waist, visible musculature, are being artificially suppressed by modern culture.
Because biology still demands strength from men for protection and provision. But culture is trying to convince women that weakness is somehow acceptable.
And this is where he attacks the societal double standards very aggressively.
I want to bring up his critique of the Barbie movie here, because it is such a sharp cultural observation.
It really is.
He points out that the character of Ken is mocked throughout the entire film for upholding the patriarchy,
Yeah.
for wanting to rule the beach, for wanting horses and power.
Right.
But then, when Ken breaks down, cries, and shows real vulnerability, he is also ridiculed and laughed at by the audience. It's a complete double bind.
It is the absolute definition of a double bind. Society tells men, do not be toxic, do not be stoic, show your feelings. But the moment a man actually cries, the biological disgust reflex kicks in, and society loses respect for him. Riker argues that culture is lying to men about what it actually desires.
So what is his solution to this double bind? He calls it strategic absurdity.
Strategic absurdity.
If human resources demands that you be less intimidating in the office, he suggests you look them dead in the eye and ask them if they prefer you to wear a floral sundress to the Tuesday morning strategy meeting.
It is weaponized confusion.
It's the lizard dropping its tail. You give them something so absurd to chew on that they leave your core identity completely alone.
It is. He frames the gym, the Iron Temple, not as a place for health, but as a political war room where you prepare for these exact corporate battles.
He notes that ancient Greeks, like Pericles, drafted the laws of democracy between wrestling matches and physical conditioning.
Yes. And he cites a Harvard Business Review study that found testosterone spikes during heavy resistance training actually sharpen competitive aggression and risk tolerance in financial negotiations.
He actually tested this himself.
He did.
Riker writes about a time he was on a conference call with a supplier. He put the call on speaker, got under a squat rack, and mid-squat with 300 pounds on his back, he offered the supplier 20% less on a massive deal.
And the supplier folded instantly.
Instantly. Because he could hear the absolute unyielding biological dominance in Riker's voice.
Riker's core thesis here is that civilization rises or falls on male physical sovereignty. He views lifting weights as a way to outlast your opponents physically and politically.
Okay, so if a man takes this advice, right, if he certifies his physical body, purges his diet of estrogen mimickers, and builds this aggressive, stoic mindset,
Yeah.
how does he possibly survive in a modern Fortune 500 company?
Well,
Because that brings us to the next massive pillar of his book. Riker believes the modern workplace has been entirely captured by what he terms woke mind viruses. He calls this the funeral of meritocracy.
this section of the book is utterly brutal. Riker claims that modern human resources departments are no longer administrative bodies.
What are they?
He calls them a Politburo of sensitivity trainers. And he says they are actively strangling corporate productivity just to justify their own existence.
He cites a leaked Reddit audio from a Fortune 500 HR director. In the audio, the director literally screams at her staff that the term cognitive ability is an oppressive white supremacist construct and can no longer be used as a metric in hiring software engineers.
Which is wild, and Riker focuses intensely on the economic cost of this ideology. He doesn't just argue against it morally, he argues that it actively destroys the bottom line.
He brings up the Walt Disney Company.
Right. According to Riker's data analysis, Disney lost $1.5 billion in market cap because they shifted their focus from product to ideology.
He points to leaked internal memos showing that Disney forced their top engineers to attend mandatory gender inclusivity workshops where they were literally taught to apologize for writing male-gazed algorithms.
He says a functional streaming app requires mathematical logic. It does not require confessing your inherent privilege to a DEI commissar.
Right, you can't code in Python with guilt.
Exactly. And he contrasts this failing, captured model with what he calls the CEO playbook.
Explain the CEO playbook.
While Riker points out a massive hypocrisy at the top of the corporate ladder, if you look at the men actually running the world, the elite of the elite, 92% of Fortune 500 CEOs use Stoic principles to govern their lives.
Wow, 92%.
Yes, they read Marcus Aurelius, they practice emotional detachment, but they just rebrand it as risk management or executive presence so they don't scare the HR departments or the shareholders.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Furthermore, 78% of those same CEOs aced childhood IQ tests.
So Riker basically frames meritocracy and ruthlessness as lost virtues. He looks back at the golden age of American innovation. He takes us to Bell Labs in the 1940s and 50s.
Bell Labs. This is the place that invented the transistor, the laser, and the UNIX operating system.
And he points out that they did it with all-male teams, smoking cigars, drinking scotch at their desks, and with absolutely zero HR departments policing their tone.
The environment of Bell Labs in 1947 is crucial to Riker's point. John Bardeen, Walter Bratton, and William Shockley invented the transistor in a hyper-competitive, high-friction, deeply critical environment.
They argued aggressively.
They fought over patents. Riker cites studies from the journal Nature showing that historically, all male groups outperform mixed gender groups in high-stakes, purely technical innovation by an 11-to-1 margin.
Okay, I want you to unpack his reasoning for that, because that is a highly controversial claim. Why does Riker think an all-male group innovates differently?
His argument is rooted entirely in evolutionary psychology and chimpanzee tribal dynamics. Yeah. He argues that male tribal loyalty thrives in clear, rigid hierarchies where status is strictly earned based on competence and results.
Okay.
Men, biologically, are comfortable with aggressive friction, debate, and hierarchy, provided the rules are merit-based.
And when you introduce mixed groups?
He argues the dynamic shifts entirely. It moves from pure problem-solving to social cohesion, managing feelings, and mitigating microaggressions.
He views diversity quotas not just as unfair, but as a biological dead end for high-level innovation. So how does a man survive in a corporate world that is already captured by HR? I want to bring up his concept of tactical vulnerability because it is genuinely fascinating.
He's brilliant.
He basically tells men to feed HR pre-packaged, safe flaws.
It's camouflage.
Exactly. Like, if HR forces you into a mandatory empathy seminar and demands you share a weakness, you don't actually tell them you have a temper. Or that you think the seminar is a massive waste of
Well,
time.
no, you would get fired.
Right. You say, my biggest flaw is I care too much about the quality of our product. Or I struggle with work-life balance because I'll stay at the office until 2 a.m. to nail a presentation for the team.
You give the empathy vampires their fix.
Yes. They feel like they've humbled you, but you haven't shown any real actionable weakness. It's corporate espionage.
That's exactly what it is. He views HR not as a support system for employees, but as an adversarial intelligence agency working for the company's liability lawyers.
You do not give them ammunition.
Never. And if defensive tactics like tactical vulnerability don't work, Riker advocates for going on the absolute offensive. He advises men to weaponize the system against itself using Title IX.
Right. He talks about a tech startup he refers to as wokeware. Tell us about this case.
Sure. Wokeware was a mid-sized tech company that required mandatory, highly aggressive gender studies training for its software engineers.
And the training explicitly blamed male employees for systemic industry failures.
It did. So over the course of 6 months, 60% of the top male engineers left, citing a hostile work environment.
But they didn't just leave quietly.
No, they didn't. They organized and sued the company for sex-based discrimination under Title IX and civil rights statutes.
Arguing that the mandatory training specifically and unfairly targeted and harassed male employees based on their gender.
Exactly. Because Title IX guarantees equal protection regardless of sex.
And the courts agreed.
The courts absolutely agreed that the training constituted a hostile work environment. The financial penalties and the brain drain were so severe that the company completely shut down.
Riker calls this economic judo. You use the weight of their own bureaucratic rules to torpedo their institutions.
But Riker also acknowledges a dark truth here. Fighting corporate America from the inside is exhausting.
It drains your testosterone, it wastes your time, and the deck is just completely stacked against you.
So, if a young man takes Riker's advice and completely rebels against this corporate HR culture, he's basically unemployable in a Fortune 500 company.
Where does he go? How does he actually make a living?
This is where Riker pivots aggressively from critique to a brand new economic blueprint. He pushes men entirely away from the white-collar path. He is aggressively championing the trades over academia.
He views the modern university system not as an institution of higher learning, but as a sophisticated system of debt slavery.
He is ruthless about colleges. He calls universities daycare centers for adult toddlers clutching gender theory pacifiers.
The rhetoric is designed to be inflammatory, for sure, but he anchors it in stark economic data. He points to a 2023 National Welding Association study.
Right, which tracked job satisfaction and debt-to-income ratios.
And the study found that an astounding 58% of college-educated men under the age of 30 deeply regret taking out loans for their degrees.
Because they find themselves underemployed in email-pushing jobs.
Conversely, only 12% of licensed welders regret their career choice.
And he gives us a perfect avatar for this movement. He introduces us to a guy he calls Jake from Boise.
Tell us about Jake.
So Jake is 24 years old. He originally went to a liberal arts college and racked up $120,000 in student loan debt for a fine arts degree.
Which is brutal.
And he was working at a coffee shop. But Jake dropped out, defaulted on the loans, and took a 6-week TIG welding certification course.
And look at the trajectory change. Today, Jake is making $85,000 a year with full benefits, fabricating prototype aerospace components for SpaceX.
Riker quotes Jake directly here. He says, "Turns out Elon Musk cares more about steady hands than postmodern critique."
It is the ultimate vindication of physical reality over theory. Riker loves to contrast this productive, tangible reality of the trades with the absolute absurdity of modern campus life.
Yeah, he brings up a real incident at Oberlin College.
The Gibson's Bakery lawsuit.
Yes, which is a prime example of institutional rot, according to Riker. But he also mentions the internal student protest where students literally demanded the school be penalized because the cafeteria staff served sushi burritos.
Right. The students claimed this was cultural appropriation and demanded safe spaces to recover from the trauma of the menu.
And Riker contrasts those students who are taking on debt to complain about a burrito with Frank the plumber.
Frank the plumber. Frank is a high school graduate. He has zero student debt. He drives a Ford F-150 and clears $98,000 a year fixing high-end bidets for rich people in the suburbs.
And Frank has never once in his life debated whether a pipe wrench reinforces the gender binary.
Because it doesn't matter. The underlying economic truth Riker is trying to impart here, the core red pill truth of his economic theory, is that degrees collect dust while skills collect checks.
You cannot debate gender theory with a broken HVAC system in the middle of a July heat wave in Arizona.
The physical world is entirely immune to ideology. It just demands competence.
Riker has this brutal, brilliant line in the book summarizing this. He says, if you want to smash the patriarchy, first learn to weld the bridge the patriarchy drives across.
Wow. It really highlights his view that tangible physical reality will always eventually crush ideological theory.
The people who know how to build the bridges and fix the power grid hold the actual power in society.
To give this historical weight, Riker compares the modern skilled trades to the Wild West. He spends a significant amount of time detailing the history of Deadwood, South Dakota in the 1870s.
Paint that picture for us. Why Deadwood?
Well, Deadwood was an illegal settlement on Indian land. It had no United States jurisdiction, no police force, no permits, and no zoning laws. Yet within a year, men flooded into the Black Hills and built a highly functional, immensely wealthy society. They built banks, saloons, mining operations, and telegraph lines completely outside the gaze of the state.
They understood that asking forgiveness beats begging permission. It was a purely results-based economy.
And he compares that 1870s frontier mentality to modern unlicensed contractors today.
Exactly. He sees modern unlicensed contractors, specifically citing a recent HVAC rebellion in Florida, where men are bypassing state licensing boards to fix air conditioners for cash, as reviving this rogue economy.
Because Riker argues that government licensing is mostly a racket designed to protect established monopolies and collect fees.
These rogue tradesmen are undercutting government-sanctioned racketeers by 70%. Riker views the trades as the last remaining frontier where a man can build an empire purely on merit, sweat, and competence.
Completely outside the gaze of HR departments and academic credentialism.
So let's say you're listening to this. You've skipped college or you've abandoned your corporate job.
You started a power washing business, or a plumbing route, or a rogue HVAC operation.
How do you dominate in this new, unregulated economy? That brings us to Section 5, what Riker calls the frame war.
The frame war. This is all about mastering your physical presence and your mental inputs to dominate every single interpersonal interaction.
Riker believes that all human interaction is a subconscious negotiation for status. He treats body language as literal biological warfare.
We touched on posture earlier with the medieval peasant, but he expands on it significantly here. Slouching isn't just bad for your lumbar spine.
No, he says slouching is how your ancestors signaled submission to predators. It's how you got eaten by wolves.
He cites the Ergonomic Research Journal, proving that men who consciously maintain upright, expansive posture increase their lifetime earnings by 18%.
Because it projects dominance and it actively alters your neurochemistry. Expanding your chest stimulates the vagus nerve and increases serotonin production, which makes you genuinely feel more confident.
And dominance is a highly convertible currency in business. He breaks down the exact mechanics of a handshake to establish this dominance immediately.
The handshake analysis is wild.
It is. He says a handshake should last exactly 3 seconds, no more, no less. And you have to pull the person slightly toward you, just an inch or two, to silently pull them off balance and establish physical superiority.
But he explicitly warns against what he calls the Zuckerberg trap.
Right. Because you see these guys who read a body language book and they try to crush your hand into dust.
Overcompensating with a vice grip screams deep insecurity. He describes Mark Zuckerberg's public handshakes as resembling a malfunctioning robot arm.
Stiff, painfully rigid, and completely devoid of human warmth.
Riker says a handshake needs to be firm and grounded, not a bone-crushing contest. It should say, I am immovable, not I am trying to hurt you.
And then there's the eyes. He calls it the Spartan gaze. This is ocular warfare.
He cites UCLA researchers who studied the neurology of eye contact. They found that the golden mean for projecting confidence and trustworthiness without triggering the brain's threat response is exactly 3.2 seconds of unbroken eye contact.
3.2 seconds. What happens at 4 seconds?
At 4 seconds, you cross what the researchers call the creep threshold.
The creep threshold.
Yes. Prolonged, unblinking eye contact activates the amygdala, the fear center, in the other person's brain. You stop looking like a confident leader and start looking like a sociopath or a serial killer about to strike.
Riker advises men to hold the gaze for 3 seconds, slowly break eye contact to the side, never looking down, which signals submission, and then return.
He talks about vocal dominance too. Speak from the diaphragm, drop your larynx to lower the pitch of your voice.
And I love the Putin method he described.
Oh, that's a great tactic.
If you are in a negotiation and you get asked a difficult question, You pause for 2 full seconds before answering. It builds incredible tension in the room. People physically lean in to hear what you are going to say.
It forces the other person to wait on your timeline. You are not rushing to fill the silence to make them comfortable.
It's all about controlling the frame of the interaction. You are the immovable object.
But Riker notes that you cannot possibly control the external frame if your internal mind is a fractured, distracted mess.
Which leads to his concept of digital rewilding.
The data he drops on attention spans here is terrifying. The average male attention span has collapsed to 47 seconds.
47 seconds. He says we're like lab rats hitting a cocaine lever until our paws bleed. Except our lever is a glowing screen delivering notifications.
We are terrified of our own thoughts.
To reclaim the mind from this digital rod, Riker mandates the 8-hour silence gauntlet.
He argues that you cannot find your biological sovereignty if you constantly have voices in your head. No music, no television, no noise-canceling headphones playing ambient lo-fi beats.
Just you, your work, and the absolute void of silence for 8 straight hours.
Okay, as someone who makes a living talking into microphones, I have to pause here. Because he literally writes in the book, motivational podcasts are audio Xanax for guys eating Taco Bell.
We have to appreciate the irony of discussing this on an audio show, but he's basically demanding absolute sensory deprivation to heal the brain.
Does silence actually do anything biological, or is it just a discipline exercise?
It is deeply biological. He cites the University of Oregon study from 2021 showing that 3 days of total silence actually stimulates neurogenesis.
It regrows neurons in the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that handles spatial awareness, memory, and threat detection.
Constant noise shrinks the hippocampus. Silence physically rebuilds it.
He pairs this silence with 72-hour water fasting to spike BDNF.
What is BDNF? Let's define that for the listener.
BDNF stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It is essentially Miracle-Gro for your brain.
Okay. Miracle-Gro.
It is a protein that promotes the survival of nerve cells and the growth of new neural pathways. When you starve the body of food for 72 hours, the brain perceives a famine.
So to help you survive the famine, it spikes BDNF by 200% to make you hyper-focused, creative, and alert so you can figure out how to find food.
Starvation and silence sharpen the mind. Constant feeding and constant noise dull it into complacency.
To really drive home how much he hates our modern digital habits, he suggests an exercise. He tells his readers to go buy a limestone block and a chisel and spend a weekend physically carving their life's purpose into the stone.
It sounds crazy, but his point is profound.
He says your Spotify Wrapped and your Twitter hot takes will disappear into the ether in a decade. But Trajan's column in Rome, which tells the story of the Dacian Wars, is still flexing its permanence 2,500 years later.
Stone beats digital scrolls.
It's an exercise in attention austerity. He wants men to treat their focus as a finite, precious currency.
Carving stone requires immense, singular focus, physical effort, and patience. It forcibly rewires the brain away from instant gratification and back toward legacy building.
Which brings us to the final, culmination stage of Riker's war plan. We are entering the end game.
You've built your wealth in the trades, you've mastered your physical body, you've detoxed your brain. How do you protect this empire?
Because Riker views the modern legal and social system as a trap designed to strip men of their assets.
He views the family court system as a literal guillotine for men. He points out that despite decades of egalitarian rhetoric, 90% of alimony victims are still men.
And he says 68% of prenuptial agreements fail in court. I did not know that. How does a legally binding contract just fail?
Because family courts have immense discretionary power. If the wrong lawyer starts arguing about lifestyle maintenance or claims the wife signed it under duress, a judge can completely shred a standard prenup.
Riker's solution is moving beyond marriage contracts entirely. He advocates for aggressive asset fortressing. He specifically recommends setting up South Dakota dynasty trusts.
Okay, break that down. Why South Dakota? What makes their trusts different?
In 1983, the governor of South Dakota, Bill Janklow, abolished something called the rule against perpetuities. In most states, a trust has to dissolve after a certain number of years, usually tied to the lifespan of the people alive when it was created. South Dakota eliminated that rule. So you can create a dynasty trust there that legally lasts forever.
Riker notes these trusts can theoretically last until the year 3023 AD.
More importantly, when you put your business or your money into this trust, you technically no longer own it. The trust does.
Therefore, in a divorce proceeding, a judge cannot easily touch those assets to award alimony because they are shielded in a perpetual legal fortress.
He literally says his great-great-grandson will use the compound interest from his South Dakota trust to fund a Mars colony brothel. He is incredibly unapologetic about securing his wealth strictly for his bloodline.
That unapologetic nature stems from his evolutionary view on hypergamy. We need to define hypergamy to understand his philosophy here.
Right, hypergamy is the practice of marrying someone of a higher sociological or educational background, marrying up the ladder.
Correct. Riker insists that hypergamy is a biological constant for women that never sleeps. He argues that modern culture tries to pretend women love unconditionally, but he believes evolutionary math dictates otherwise.
He says, women rate men on income and capacity for violence. Men rate women on waist-to-hip ratios.
He views human mating as cold, biological math, devoid of romantic fairy tales. If you lose your wealth or your strength, he argues, you will lose your family.
And he applies this same cold utilitarian math to religion. This is fascinating. He argues for what he calls God's ROI, or return on investment.
He doesn't necessarily argue for religion from a theological standpoint. He doesn't care if you actually believe the stories in the Bible or the Quran. He argues for faith from a purely demographic standpoint.
He says religion beats atheism purely on the numbers. He cites data showing that 38% of atheist secular men under 40 are actively planning to get vasectomies because of climate change anxiety or antinatalist philosophies.
Meanwhile, religious men are having 4 kids and building multi-generational dynasties.
He uses the historical example of Joseph Stalin to prove this. Stalin and the League of Militant Atheists murdered 20 million Christians.
Riker calls this a massive demographic blunder. He argues that if Stalin had just left the Orthodox Church alone and let them breed, the USSR's population might have outgrown NATO by 1980.
Riker believes that secular rationalists are racing to sterilize themselves out of the gene pool, while religious rituals actually promote dominance.
He specifically points to rituals like fasting during Ramadan or strict Orthodox Lent. These acts of communal deprivation actually spike testosterone and promote in-group loyalty and dominance displays.
Religion is a survival mechanism for the tribe.
It's a completely utilitarian, evolutionary view of faith, and this leads to his final, perhaps most controversial point, the brotherhood vacuum.
He argues that men cannot survive in isolation, but they also cannot thrive in mixed-gender corporate spaces. He argues for the absolute necessity of male-only tribes.
He cites UFC CEO Dana White, who credits part of his Fight Empire's early ruthless success to explicitly banning his wife from the office so the men could operate in a state of high aggression without needing to temper their language or behavior.
Riker also brings up Harvard's 1920 secret court.
Now, context here. The 1920 secret court at Harvard was a dark, horrific tribunal that hunted down and expelled gay students.
Yes, it was deeply oppressive.
Yeah.
But Riker uses the existence of these elite, exclusionary male spaces, like the secret societies of the Ivy League, to make a point about how empires are built.
He argues that despite the moral failings of those specific courts, the structure of absolute male isolation fostered a bonding ritual so effective that alumni from those eras built the modern financial system and still donate billions to those specific institutions today.
Riker says men need spaces completely free from female observation. Why observation specifically?
Because according to the psychological studies Riker cites, when women are present in a room, male behavior instantly shifts toward posturing for mate selection and mitigating risk to appear safe and stable.
He notes research showing that men take 23% more risks in financial and physical endeavors when women aren't present to observe them.
He believes innovation requires extreme risk, which requires a lack of observation.
Synthesizing all of this, Riker brings these threads together into what he calls the Iron Pact.
It is a complete and utter rejection of modern egalitarianism. If you are listening to this and you value equality, Riker's book is your ideological opposite.
He isn't looking for equality. He is advocating for strict, hierarchical brotherhoods bound by shared suffering, rigid rules, and biological essentialism.
So for Riker, leaving a legacy isn't about reading bedtime stories to your kids or going to Disney World or doing TikTok dances in the kitchen.
It's about bloodlines. It's about land deeds. It's about carving your surname into stone like a 14th century French knight.
It is a wildly intense, uncompromising worldview that demands you view every aspect of your life, your shower, your handshake, your investments, as an act of war.
It is. We have spent this time thoroughly and strictly neutrally, unpacking the explosive, unyielding red pill philosophy contained within Conrad Riker's Mastering Self-Control.
It is a comprehensive blueprint that advocates for tearing down modern comforts, rejecting corporate structures, and resurrecting primal biological sovereignty.
It is a massive amount of information to digest, and we have only scratched the surface of the data he presents.
If you want to read these uncut, raw arguments for yourself, if you want to dive into the footnotes and the history, you need to check Amazon Kindle and Google Playbooks to buy the ebook today.
Definitely. And if you want to follow the ongoing development of this philosophy, you can follow the author directly at Conrad Riker on Substack for his weekly intel on bypassing the matrix.
And of course, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the deep dive so we can keep bringing you these breakdowns.
But before we sign off, we want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over. We've just spent this time detailing a philosophy built on extreme self-reliance, rebellion against corporate HR, and isolation from mainstream egalitarian culture.
But think about this.
If Riker's vision actually comes to pass, if millions of men unplug from the system, build their own off-grid fortresses, create their own untouchable 1,000-year trusts, and form their own isolated, hyper-masculine Spartan tribes.
How long will it take before those very fortresses become the rigid traditional institutions that the next generation of rebels will feel the desperate need to tear down?
That is the eternal cycle of history.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next deep dive.